why is it that a lot of black people don't want to work for other black people? There are so many black women, black professional women that are leaving jobs without even having any jobs. And what's fascinating is that a lot of them are actually leaving jobs under other black bosses who are also women.
Hello everybody, my name is Siphiwe Moyo. Welcome to another episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. I like repeating my name, man. Like I used to tell my wife that I'm going to be a brand, baby. I'm gonna be a brand. So I'm the executive director of the Organizational Behavior Institute and I'm a global speaker and facilitator. I have an exceptional guest today, special guest. His name is Jabu Zwane, founder of the Mindset Development Institute. He's a speaker, he's a facilitator. And Jabu and I are going to have a fascinating conversation, and I can say that even in advance, about mindset development and its effect on some organizational behavior outcomes. It's going to be an amazing chat. But before we do that, while he's sitting there looking like a guest speaker, do you guys know how guest speakers look like when you introduce them when they're about to speak? Yeah? They have that shyness but the adrenaline is pumping. It's like, okay, get it over and done with.
Can you get done with the introduction already?
Please. They are pumping, so he's looking like that, and I want to delay him. Because before we chat to Jabu, we have a new feature. At the beginning of every show, I highlight a new organizational behavior research paper that I'm reading. It's either new or it's fascinating to me. There's this particular paper that has been just published on the 21st of June, 2024. Fresh from the box, as they say in South Africa. The paper is called Previously Endured Distress Reduces the Quality of the Compassion Extended Towards Sufferers of Workplace Distress. It's by Reid Livendar, Horia Jazarek, and Veronica. So basically it explores the paradoxical effect where individuals who have been previously distressed may offer lower quality compassion to others experiencing similar distress. It reveals that past suffering can actually lead to harsher judgment and less empathetic responses, contrary to what one might expect. So it's very interesting because, and I'd love your comment, Jabu, on this before we delve into our topic. So imagine, if you're listening now, imagine suffering in silence at work, only to find that those who've walked in your shoes, who've had the same trauma and suffers the same thing, are actually going to be less compassionate to you than those who haven't. I've always thought that if maybe you've had it hard in the workplace or whatever, you'll have a little bit more compassion. But this paper reveals a shocking truth that previously endured distress can actually reduce the quality of compassion. And I guess you see this in people who go through apprenticeships just because it was hard on them. They also want it to be harder on other people, this paper reveals. What's your initial thought on it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's great. I've been looking forward to this, and I've been hounding like, hey, when am I coming on? But anyway, here we are. Thank you. I feel special now that you've invited me.
Thanks for coming, man.
I believe that I am special. Otherwise, I was doubting this whole relationship the whole time. Like, what the heck, man? Now it's sealed and confirmed. You and I are like this,
yes,
chief.
You're going to have to explain the chief thing because it's an inside joke.
Well, the chief thing is that it was actually last year at the PSA. Year before, PSA convention, where the other gentleman from India, I can't remember his name, with the with the mustache, and he was speaking about actually why it's important to have a chief when you are in this space of professional speaking. And a chief is somebody who has walked the path, understands how everything works, and they can be able to share wisdom with you. And also there's somebody who can build you, not just criticize you. And then the exercise that he gave was that you find your own chief right now within the convention. I was like, you're my chief. So that's where the chief comes from.
In South Africa, it's weird because we use the word chief, right, for other things.
Yes.
Yeah, so nice.
Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all that that's the case. If you think about the statement that hurt people hurt, oppressed people oppress, and those actually who are oppressed tend to be worse oppressors than the oppressors themselves.
Sure.
And it's about learned behavior, right? If I don't learn anything new, then I'll continue with what I know. it may be the very same thing that I hate more than anything in the world. But if I don't learn any kind of behavior that replaces that old behavior, I'm going to emulate that.
Yeah.
Kids that are born to fathers who are alcohol abusers end up becoming alcoholics. Who are physical abusers end up themselves being physical abusers. Because as human beings, we are constantly learning, and we are learning more at a passive state than we are actively involved in the action of learning itself. We don't, because you think about it, I mean, if you were to learn everything that you needed to learn intentionally, how much time would you need? You would need lifetimes to do that. So thankfully, by God's grace, by intelligent design, our entire structure is constantly extracting information from the environment, and it is building up who we are. And so I think that's for me. That's actually why that makes sense to me. That when you first start out, let's say at an organization, you're still young, you're still new, you don't know much, and you are in that hyper state of learning. And unfortunately, if you are in a very oppressive environment where you've been mistreated, in a way, you get the message that this is how things are supposed to be.
Sure.
You may not like it, how it feels on you. For me, there's something else. The fact that you have survived it, in a way, you kind of give yourself props that I've gone through that. And in a way, because of if that is the people who are in power, if that is how they are, what you learn is that that's how I also need to be. Unless you decide I need to heal, I need to learn a different way of doing things, unfortunately, you're going to go back to default settings.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I've had a lot of candidate attorneys who, that particular system where that qualifies lawyers who say, the environment is so harsh, people don't treat us well when we're in our candidate attorney phase. But the same people, once they become attorneys, and they, I think it's called senior partner, and up to a point where they become a partner or a director, or I can't remember the hierarchy, they then exhibit the same behaviors that they didn't like at that time. And then they speak about the then candidate attorneys that maybe they're soft, maybe they don't want to pay the price, they don't want to pay their dues. It's weird, and I think we have to probably be intentional about changing that behavior, or should it change? Or maybe it's okay that people need to pay their dues and toughen up.
I mean, there's absolutely a lot of truth to the fact that we all have to pay our dues. But the question is that how do we pay our dues? Does it have to cost us our psychological well-being, our emotional well-being, our physical well-being? I mean, studies are coming out to show that, for example, there are so many black women, black professional women that are leaving jobs without even having any jobs. And what's fascinating is that a lot of them are actually leaving jobs under other black bosses who are also women. And then another thing that you're also finding is that a lot of people don't like, let's talk about an oppressive system. Why is it that a lot of black people don't want to work for other black people? And they'll complain about the same thing. They'll complain about a mistreatment. And here's the double-edged sword with that, is that if I know you know what I'm going through, for me it's like a double betrayal. The fact that you are not, now that you are in power and you are not changing the behavior, I feel betrayed, I feel defeated. So whatever element of hope that I may have had, that someone like you understands what I'm going through, will come and make things better, now I feel defeated. Same thing that we're having in our country right now, even in South Africa with the current government. So many of our people, the reason why we are so in a way hopeless and desperate, is realizing that people that should understand how important it is to urgently change and transform the country don't seem to get the message, don't seem to have the will, or are not, at least, let's say at the very best, they're not delivering the change as quickly as we feel that it is needed. So it has to change. There's absolutely no way around it. And I think for us as mediators in terms of being communicators, being healers, being transformational people, it is our duty to send out that message to say, listen, unless you learn a new behavior to replace the old behavior will always catch you.
That's fascinating for me, because we've had conversations with you around trauma. You've just used the word healing just now, and it's fascinating because every time we're in organizational spaces, the use of words like trauma, healing, many people regard those words as maybe an exaggeration. Surely workplaces don't have trauma. Surely workplaces don't need healing. You almost have to use neutral words to talk about those things. Do you think there's something called workplace trauma? Do you think there's some kind of healing needed in the workplaces, whether it's in the relationship between an employer and an employee, or is there something called organizational trauma in your view?
Oh, absolutely. Every single human setting has got its own, institutional behavior, or from relationships to the environment to the institutional structure itself, as far as what you regulate as acceptable behavior. If we would ask pharmacists in terms of prescription drugs, they will tell us that there is workplace trauma. If we spoke to HR and asked them how many people are having to go off work over stress-related matters, they will tell us so. Yeah. If we study cancer, if we study lupus, if we study rheumatoid arthritis, if we study all of these autoimmune diseases that are so difficult to identify, most of them are linked to stress. And a lot of people would link that stress to work, because that is where we spend most of our time. That's where we spend most of our time. And that is where actually we are judged the most for our ability to perform, which is normally linked to our own worth. So if I am working very hard and I'm giving everything that I've got, and then you are not rewarding me the way that I feel or that we've agreed that you're supposed to reward me, it places a question on how you view my worth. Ultimately, since you are at the top of the hierarchy as somebody that has power, your power is gonna start to impose itself on my own free will and my own ability to think for myself. The same way that a child is highly impacted by their parent and what the parents say about them, or the coach impacts the student or the athlete. Those hierarchies of power, they impact how and who I become, because I understand that you have gone the path. You have done this before I did. And if you're at the top of the hierarchy, my perception is that you have succeeded, and the success ultimately is what I'm aiming for, because that is ultimately a validation of my worth. So if you keep on telling me that I am not good enough in terms of my work, and you're not going to pay me, and there's a constant disregard and invalidation of who I am as a person, it eventually does affect me. And I think that's what, for me, the question here is, also the issue of the language. I think there's a lack of human language in organizations, and then as a result, then we underplay the humanity, and in a way, and this might be harsh, dehumanize each other with our language. Because then, as opposed to seeing you as a human being who is struggling, let's say because of you have a lack of awareness, even though you're highly intelligent, you need some time to be able to catch up and gather enough knowledge and experience so that you can apply your intelligence. I'm rushing your process and I want you to be ready before you are. Then I'm treating you as a machine. I'm not treating you as a human being. I'm treating you as a robot. And that in itself for me is dehumanization. And I believe that if we treat each other as less human, it'll always result in those behavioral issues and those emotional issues and those mental issues. That's why there's a pandemic that we see in the world today. And outside of course, of the fact that the things are happening in the world, we cannot deny that a lot of that pandemic, mental health pandemic, is linked to how people experience workplaces.
As you know, we are passionate in this podcast about creating workplaces that do not feel toxic, I guess, where people do not feel like work is a drag, or where people do not feel like work is something that they need to endure so that maybe they will enjoy on the weekend. But you are arguing that there are things that are happening in the workplace at the moment that are triggering people, that are causing trauma in people. And you've even gone to an extent that most of the things that we do in the workplace we're dehumanizing people, which is fascinating, because I think you study mindset. You are the founder of the Mindset Development Institute, and maybe that's a nice segue to get your thinking around what inspired you to found that Mindset Development Institute. What were you seeing that you thought there's something about the mind that if we don't get it right, maybe we might be causing harm? What inspired you to do that?
I mean, a couple of things. I think the main one actually is the grief that I carry with me as a human being. The grief that I carry when I see how the way we think impacts the way we experience life, the way we experience ourselves, the way we experience others, the way we experience what we have. If I am thinking that I don't have a great life, that is going to impact the way that I perceive the things that I have. If I think that, okay, I would love to have, I don't have the best life that I would like to have, but I can work towards creating that life, it's going to impact the way that I experience, what I have. There will be an element of gratitude in there that will help me endure whatever hardships that I may be experiencing at the moment. But if I'm thinking that life is crap, people don't care, and I have a cynicism that has now manifested itself into this negative attitude towards everything. And it doesn't matter how great a life I make. I may experience some relief now because at least I've made R1 million. I'm feeling some relief. I'm excited. But it's only a matter of time before my perception overwhelms that positive event that has happened in my life. But if I'm thinking that I'm creating something, I'm able to sustain, or rather I'm able to maximize out of those positive things because I'm looking at it from the point of I am creating. I'm an active participant in transforming my life. I was at a point in my life in 2019, 17th of January, receiving a phone call telling me that my kids have been kicked out of school, and I'm fighting lawyers for my house from being repossessed. I've given my cars back to the bank. I'm getting tired of calling friends and asking them for money. The very same gentleman in this room who's doing this podcast here, asking him, hey, Pastor G, can you send me 250 rands, man, And then, you're in that place where you're thinking to yourself, but what the heck is the problem here? And the phone call comes through. A gentleman says to me on the other side, listen, I've got this problem. And I speak to him for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then I sort out the problem. And then it dawned on me.
You sort out his problem?
Yeah, I sorted his problem. It dawned on me. You're sorting people's problems, but you can't sort your own. What is the problem?
Sure.
This was the question in my mind. And I realized, for most people, it's never a question of ability. It's not a question of whether you work hard or not. It's not even sometimes a question of whether you've had opportunities or resources or even not had support. It has everything to do with, first of all, how you see yourself, starting with your identity. Who do you think you are? Do you think you deserve? Do you think you deserve the things you desire to have? Do you think you deserve the things that you've worked very hard to acquire and keep, that you have worked hard, the money that you've made? Do you think you deserve it? If you don't think you deserve it, you're going to give it away. You're going to come up with some moral excuse and say, I'm a generous person, I'm a Christian, you know what, money doesn't mean anything. All the valuable things that you've got, you're not going to preserve them. Because you don't think you deserve anything good for yourself, right? So how you perceive yourself, and I realized how I perceived myself was a problem. How I perceived other people in comparison to me was a problem. I thought other people were more worthy than I was. And I would go out of my way to help people sort their lives out while my own life is falling apart. I'd even come up with those quotes. I remember one quote that I put up was that, one of the greatest things about being a man of God is that you can build other people's houses when yours is being torn apart by a storm. You
Sounds powerful.
It sounds powerful, right? I mean, you come up with all these incredible things that make you feel good about your dysfunction. And I call it dysfunction because we have to judge the outcomes of your actions eventually in terms of how they first serve you before they serve others. Because it is important to see, how does it serve me? So it was, for me, a rescue mission. I believe that God extended to me to save myself. And that's where the Institute comes from. It's from a deep reflection, looking at my life, looking at my relationships with other people, looking at me as a black South African man in South Africa living in the capital city. Basically one of the best capital cities in the entire continent. Probably one of the best, one of the top 20, top 50 in the world. Realizing that I'm at the top of the top 10%, maybe even the top 5% in terms of access to infrastructure and what the world can give. And I'm not a dumb person. I've got all these abilities. Then how come I'm finding myself constantly in unfavorable situations where it's starting to cause a cognitive dissonance, even for those who are around me? Like, okay, there's a disconnection here. Isn't this guy brilliant? Isn't this guy great? Then how come it doesn't translate into the outcomes that someone with the abilities should have? So, a long way of answering the question, but I hope it does hit the point.
What did you find? What were the reasons?
I found that I was a broken person. I found that I had a lot of healing that I needed to do. I found that I didn't have a very healthy relationship with myself. The way that I perceived myself was not very helpful to serve me, especially it wasn't helpful to enable me to use the skills and talents that God has given to me to serve me and mine. And I say mine in terms of my family. I wasn't, to have situations where my kids are being kicked out of school is not a good place to be. And then to find some kind of moral gratification using some spiritual justification to take away from my family and to continue to give to other people, that reflected deeply in terms of my own self-perception. So what I found is that I needed to understand a little bit more about this creature that is me, that God has created in His image and in His likeness. Do I really treat myself like I have been fearfully and wonderfully made? Do I really treat myself like I am somebody that is worthy of love? And the thing about it is this, is that, if you don't have a very healthy way of loving yourself, you also don't have a very healthy way of loving other people. And the thing about it is that sometimes we mistreat ourselves and then we use treating other people well as a way of somehow, again, getting some moral gratification because we don't like ourselves.
Isn't being others-centered quite noble, though?
The nobility remains, but how does it play out ultimately in your life? Does it play out in you being unhealthy, you being unwell, you being at a disadvantageous position? How does it play out? Because if it ends up with you being sick, it's not good. If it ends up with you, those who are closer to you, not being disadvantaged, because we have a tendency then that those who are close to us, once we are secure in their love, we're going to treat them the way we treat ourselves. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that now they're paying the price that you want to pay, but now you're making them pay because you want to attend to you.
Is that why sometimes people use words like public success but private failure? Because the people who are immediately in my surrounding are not benefiting from this Superman that other people are seeing.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. There's actually a trend right now on one of those platforms, TikTok, right? Where they're saying the shock I have when other people speak about my mother and my father, for example. Like when people are talking about their parents, they're like, what the heck? This is not the same person that I know, that I experienced in my own home. This person that is so kind and so nice and so amazing, that's just not the person that we know. You know what I mean? And I think it's great to live and to lay down your life for others. Now, as a Christian, the Bible says that to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That is predicated on, the love for others is predicated on how you love yourself. And the other part is that, of course, loving God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. But understanding how much God loves you, right? And so the framework of love that you have towards yourself ultimately is going to be experienced mainly by the people who are close to you. So at work, when you are secure in that job as a manager, how you love yourself is going to be reflected on how you love others, how you treat those who are reporting to you. Because those are the ones who are closer to you. Those are the ones that you have a secure relationship with.
So could managers who are abusing their immediate staff be doing that from a self-loathing?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
It's from a self-loathing.
Sure.
Because no human being sits down and say, my goodness, I was rude today. I was incredibly rude today. I mean, that's amazing. I want to do it again tomorrow. Like, nobody's thinking that, right? You want to find a way to justify why you want to come up with some conceited moral reasoning why you are like that. Don't bring your problems from home and bring them here at work. This is a professional environment. That's the justification, right? Meanwhile, you're talking to the person like they're trash. You know you would never want anybody to talk to you that way. You would never want anybody to talk to somebody that you care about that way. But you find a way to talk to other people that way. Again, going back to a point about if that's what you saw, maybe other managers have done to you, then you didn't like it, you didn't enjoy it, but you've enjoyed it, right? And you've given yourself some kind of props to say, you know what, I'm an overcomer, I'm resilient, I was able to go through all of that. Now you're like, I want to also pass on that resilience to you as well, right? You know you're justifying. You know you're justifying a behavior that you know is not well. And a big part of it is that there's a part of you that is accepted, that you can be treated that way. And that's why also then you sort of administer the same kind of behavior also to other people.
Yeah, so you've told us about 2019, and it looks to me that you've done a lot of work from 2019 to now. Firstly, on that journey of self-love, it looks like you've done a lot of work. So if someone is watching us right now and they feel they're at that stage where they even believe I don't deserve good things in life, I'm self-loathing, I'm self-sabotaging, what's the kind of work you had to do? And it sounds to me, you had language, you had tools, you had framework to work on that yourself. Can I assume that other people generally would not have that and they would definitely need help? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I mean, we need to do the inner work. The starting point for me as a Christian was understanding maybe somebody who's may not resonate, and it's okay. The starting point was to understand, who is it that God has created me to be? Why is it that God loves me as a human being? The second part is that, okay, then who am I? Who am I as a human being? Other than I'm a black male who was born in Africa, in South Africa, and in a tiny place in the Free State somewhere, that I belong to my parents. There's certain aspects of who I am as a person that are absolutely unchangeable, like those are the facts. So I would say start off with that. Write down who you are. Sometimes people don't even write down every single element about who you are that is unchangeable. And I'm saying specifically unchangeable because that is going to impact the factors that are changeable about you as a person. The second part is, who are you deep down as a human being? Are you compassionate? Are you caring? Are you considerate? Are you kind? Are you forgiving? Are you understanding? Are you somebody that is principled? Are you reliable? Are you dependable? Is that how you would describe yourself? And how do you know? You know basically in terms of how you've been there for people. You listen to what people say about you. You listen to how people behave towards you. Do they keep on coming to you whenever they're in trouble? Are you the first person they come to you? Because sometimes you have to oftentimes rather, you have to get feedback from the environment, from the people who are around you, because they're looking from the outside. And sometimes, and a lot of times, their perception of who you are is more objective than you.
True.
Than you have it.
True.
And then you must do it actually in contrast to two things. The people that you've known for a very long time and the people that you're meeting now. Why? The people that you've known for a long time, they build a history with you, and sometimes that familiarity can breed a little bit of devaluation of who you are and contempt.
Absolutely.
And jealousy and envy and all sorts of other things that may not necessarily be helpful. But when you meet people for the first time, they don't know about your history, and they're treating you based on what they see in front of them. And that is why the people
I almost said amen.
Of course, amen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the Bible says the same thing, that the prophets are without honor in their own town, right? When you and I meet for the first time, we're meeting each other based on who we are now, the work that we have already done. Yes, there'll be an element of shock to say, oh, is that how you were? But that doesn't reflect on who you are now, right? And you need that feedback from those people in your new environments, because they'll tell you exactly who you have become, because you don't necessarily see who you have become, but they can actually become a very good reflective mirror of who you have become objectively, because they don't have anything necessarily that they want from you, all right?
If you haven't done a bit of work, you end up dismissing, though, the feedback you are getting from the people that know you now.
Exactly.
Because maybe you are caught up in the feedback from people who've known you before.
Yeah, you are contrasting that with what they've known you. And remember, with the people that you've known for a long time, in mindset development, I speak about approved sources of influence. And these are the people that you've known for a long time. Why they're approved? You've got history with them. There's a relational value with them. There's enough evidence that they either care for you somewhat, even if there may have been some kind of abuse. And what doesn't happen is this: with people that we've known for a long time, we don't exercise assessment, validation. We don't do filtering, because there's history. We're comfortable with let's say the vulgar words. We're comfortable with we are comfortable with their uncomfortable behaviors. Whether they're abusive, whether they be dismissive, we have found a way to be comfortable with them. And so we don't go through the whole, they're dangerous, because they prove, we sort of know, they'll swear and swear, but they're not going to go become violent. Or even if they become violent, I can be able to contain them in a way. With new people, we normally then we validate, we're assessing, we're filtering, we're trying to make sure that they're safe, right? And that's why every time they say something that contradicts what they know, we then fight it. But no, man, it's okay. Yeah, but you too, And then you pass on, somebody gives you a compliment and then you give it back to them because you don't feel like you deserve, or you feel uncomfortable with that compliment. And it's one of the things that I always say, one of the ways that you can use as a litmus test for whether or not you are comfortable with who you are. How comfortable are you with compliments? How do you behave? Do you give it back? Do you sidetrack? Do you wish they could shut up? But then you don't really want them to shut up. You wish you were in the other room. You could hear them privately talking about you nicely. And then you can just feel good. But when someone is in front of you, you have that discomfort with with the compliment, like the way we were doing with you at the passage. Yeah, I could see that the guy it's great, but it's like, can y'all just shut up? And one of the reasons why we do that, though, there's a positive reason why we do that. We do that because we know what it's like for others to be put down, because we've been there, right? And so it's almost like we feel like if we are being exalted, being praised, we are accepting the fact that we are better than other people, and we don't want to be better than other people, and we don't want them to feel like they're worse than us. That's why, in a way, we want to also pass it back to them.
All right, this is fascinating, and I think I feel like zoning in a little bit on the journey of healing that you've had, because it might help somebody else and so on. And I think, but I want to nudge us to think about mindset development in the context of the workplace. As you know, and on the show we focus more on organizational behavior. I'm curious to know how does mindset influence some of the organizational behavior outcomes that we think about. So how I think about myself, how does it influence my performance in the workplace? How does it influence the culture that I bring, the way I lead, my self-worth in the workplace, and so on? Do you have a view on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, mindsets are pretty much who you are as a person. The way that I describe them in the Institute is that these are structured categories of thinking that lead to an outcome, whether you are aware of it or not.
Sure.
And that description is very intentional. There's a structure of thinking because our brains they arrange information in categories. It's arranged in categories. And each category is populated by a way of thinking. And the consistency of that thinking would lead to a particular outcome. You know what I mean? So the way that you perceive yourself as a leader, if you think, I am a strong leader, what populates your category of strong? What populates your category of leadership? Is strength oppression? Is strength having autonomy? Is strength a lack of accountability? Right? What is the model of your leadership that determines how you perceive yourself in that role? Where does it come from? There's also a source of your thoughts. Where did you first encounter leadership? Of course, with your parents. Of course, with your teachers. Of course, with your older siblings in those family structures where age is a factor of the hierarchy of authority. Of course, your environment that you come from. Those experiences, that knowledge is going to populate your category of leadership and form your framework of leadership, right? And then there's, of course, the factor of your own desires. There's the factor of your own aspirations, which will impact the way that you perceive yourself as a leader. Aspirations will impact the way you perceive others in the process of helping you to get to your aspirations. Do you see people as tools that you're going to use to get there? Or do you see people as collaborators? Do you see people as partners? Do you see them as human beings whose resources of intelligence, of energy, of skills you're grateful for, that you have the privilege to leverage in your quest of leadership, in your role of leadership? I mean, this is so deep.
It is.
As far as really what for me, what leadership is. And I always say to people, if you really understand the kind of leader that you are, go back to looking at your structural experience, your foundational experiences. How was your relationship with your father, with your mother, with your parents, with your teachers? What was it like? Because that is the foundational framework of your leadership. That's the foundational framework.
Man. So basically, you're saying all the outcomes that we're seeing in our lives now, they are a consequence of the mindset that we have. So in other words, if I want to change my outcome, I have to disrupt the mindset that I'm having now.
Absolutely.
But how do I do that then? So if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't like the outcomes that I'm seeing in my life. I don't like where I am right now. I feel like I should be more in life right now. If wherever I am now is a product of my mindset, and I believe that, and I think you are so spot on. If I want to disrupt my mindset and therefore my outcome, it just feels a little bit overwhelming on how I can disrupt those.
It's a big work. You've mentioned it you identified it very well, that you look at the outcome. Do you like it or not? You don't judge it like, okay, is it serving me or is it not serving me? How do you determine that? Am I living the life that I would love to live? Is it ideal? Is it making sense? Does it reflect what I would like to see in my life, right? And then you make that assessment.
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental, right? And then you go back and you say, okay, so where does it go wrong? All right. What do I think about where I am right now as a manager? Do I feel like it's a favor that has been done for me? Right? Do I feel like I don't deserve it? Then why do I feel like I don't deserve it? And then where does that idea come from? Right? You need to be able to identify the source. and many of the behavior has more to do with uprooting some of those seeds, or at the very least, doing some kind of alteration of how you see that, right? Like, you can't change your past, but if you're realizing that I have a wrong perception of who I am, where does it come from? Okay, it comes from the way that my family used to view me. Okay, but I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm now an adult. I have my own independence. I can make up my own mind. So how do I want to see myself? How do I want others to perceive me? I'll give you a simple example. It might be deep, but I think for many of people who look like us, it might make sense.
Sure.
I come from a very small town in the Free State, right? And part of the awe of my upbringing was the Josie brothers, the Pumejos, the guys who would come from Joburg, come and visit my small town. What used to happen in those school holidays, if the Josie guy came and then the Josie guy likes your girl, you're done. Your girl is going to be hanging out with the Josie guy until they leave. And then when you leave, you got a chance to come back. So that's the way that we view ourselves as small town people is very small. So when I came to Joburg, I was overwhelmed because now I'm among these Josie brothers. They've been living here. I mean, they know Sentons, the Houghtons, the Pretorias, and for me, everything is huge. And they seem to be like just cruising around, and I'm working with them. And then these guys just seem to be knowing. Even though I was working hard, even though I was getting promoted, I still continue to see myself as that small person. There's a point where I needed to say, but I'm not that person anymore. You know what the sad thing is about it? It happened in my late 30s. It happened, in fact, about 3 years ago. I'm in New York with Dr. Nico Tlek, the same gentleman who brought me up to Joburg. I stayed with is a white man, Afrikaans man, that I stayed with for a couple of years. Long story, I'm not going into that now. And we're supposed to be doing a pitch in front of these potential funders for a foundation that we're running together. For some reason, he struggles and he stumbles a little bit out over his words. And I realized, my goodness, I need to take over the conversation. It was almost like I'm having an out-of-body experience, looking at myself from the outside and saying to myself, but you are not that small kid you're not that poor kid from the Free State who's so in awe of the fact that you are now at Princeton University, you are in front of these people that have raised a lot of money, and look at you now type of thing. Like, no. I am an executive director. I am a global leader. I'm in front of other global leaders. I know why we're here, and I can articulate it very well. And that's who I am now with all the history. So I need to speak from that point. And that's taking that ownership of that identity in that moment has been that transformational moment for me, where like, okay, you are here. You've come here because of you are capable, you are able. And that needs to happen with people, where you need to start divorcing yourself from that identity and start taking on your ownership of your identity as an adult. Because I think, not to drag this on for too long, that every adult has to be at a point, has to have a moment where they say, who have I become now as an adult? Yes, it is true that I became all that I became up until this point without being aware of it. Because by the time that you realize you were certain dysfunctional behaviors at the age of 19, 20, 22, you have become all of that, and you didn't even know that you were becoming all of that. You didn't even know that you were angry. You didn't even know that you were traumatized. You only start seeing the effects of trauma in your relationships when you get married, when you're raising your kids. Like, my goodness, I'm a terrible father. I yell all the time. Why am I yelling? Why am I getting triggered when my kids are asking me questions, or when my wife asks me questions? Like, why do I feel so uncomfortable in these spaces? You don't know that you've become all of that. But when you sit down and you say, who do I want to become? What is it in my current behavior and way of thinking that contradicts that? Where does it come from? What do I need to replace it with? Where do I need to go to get the transformation? Is it counseling? Is it psychology? Is it the church? Is it a coach? Is it a mentor? Do I need to change the spaces where I put myself in because they're constantly bringing me down? So you are saying to yourself, I'm a grown person who's independent, who's intellectually capable, who has a goal that they want to achieve. And I have to now begin to let everything that I have serve that now. All my experiences, all my skills, all my knowledge, they have to serve that now. And this is a non-negotiable. And I've got to go through it, and I've got to do what needs to be done for me to get to that place.
You know what's the sense I'm getting, and I don't even know where I want to go with this, because you're dropping so many gems, man. The sense that I'm getting is that, or the conclusion that I'm reaching is that every human being outside of the workplace needs to do this deep work. And I think as men in particular, we generally frown upon words like healing work. Have you done some inner work, whatever? I think ladies generally use words like inner work and whatever, but it just looks like every human being needs to do this work. And some people, maybe they don't even know where to go when they discover that the outcomes that they are seeing is not something that they want. It even feels to me like every leader in the workplace should actually be forced to do some work before they manage people.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if someone is sitting at home and have to think about what would be my next step if I'm discovering that, okay, I don't like the outcomes that I'm seeing. I do get a sense that I need to do some work. I don't know where to start. I think things like counseling are really great. Maybe if I do have a bit of disposable income, therapy and so on. Or is there some kind of frameworks that I can try and follow to do this inner work by myself?
You know what the beauty is about the world we're living in today is that we all have access, or at least most of us have access to the internet these days. A lot of my inner work and my inner healing, I listen to people. I curate the content I consume online to deal with my mindset, and I continue to do that. And whenever I see anything I don't like in my life, I know it has something to do with the way that I think, because the way that I think impacts and the way that I apply myself, or the way that I use things that I have in my life, the resources that I've got in my life, even people that I have in my life, right? As God has given them as a gift. How do I facilitate that relationship, right? So I curate the content that I need that can serve me. So I think the starting point these days, follow, subscribe to, listen to people that can talk to what you're struggling with, and because you can borrow from that, right? You can borrow from that yourself and begin to see yourself differently. People like myself, people like you, we put out a lot of content out there that people can consume for free to do inner work. You know, I am very intentional, for example, with my platform, that if you really need inner work and you land on Jabu Zwane Talks on TikTok, you're going to be going through some serious therapy. You know what I mean? True. Because I'm intentional.
You did a series that I just thought this series was mine, Shem. Do you remember the series that you did about boundaries, saying no, that type of stuff?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that was mine. I still need to pay you for that.
Oh, cool, sure. I'll send the invoice.
Yeah, okay, so choose and curate the content.
Choose and curate the content. The second thing is that look out for events. Look for events. Or if you go online, whether you go on Google or on these AI platforms, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, and you say self-development or personal development events around me, it's able to give you those events around you. And then quite a lot of those events are actually free, or at least they're affordable. Or sometimes they even have complimentary tickets. If you go there, this is what happens for me. What happened is that I started finding people who are like-minded, who've gone through what I've gone through. Don't judge what I've gone through. If anything, then we begin to create those meaningful connections on the basis of the goal of wanting to heal together. So you know what I mean? And that becomes a supportive structure for you.
And we must never underestimate that peer-to-peer.
Oh, no, you must never underestimate that.
Powerful.
And then also confront yourself about, especially if you're a shy person and then you're a mistrusting person and you're not get easily open to other people, and understand where that comes from. If you got hurt by your family, by your friends, by whoever that had been part of your life up until that particular point, and understand that you will still be suspicious of any potential new relationship, but there has got to be some kind of a faith or a courage that you got to cultivate to say, what if this is actually the relationship that I've wanted all my life? You know, I would say today, 70% of the relationship that I have today, I didn't have more than 5 years ago.
Yes, and that's so good.
You know, and those are like very meaningful. And I would say, even the relationship that I've had 4 or 5 years, like with the gentleman in the room right now, our relationships have changed. They have completely changed. So the way that we relate to each other now, as we all are walking the journey of transformation together, we are transforming together. And that's one of the greatest challenges as well, is that you are transforming and the people around you are not. They form emotional dependence, physical dependence, resource dependence, intellectual dependence, spiritual dependence on the person that you are now. When you begin to transform, it creates that instability in the energy of your sphere. And they start to wonder, what does your change mean for them? And a lot of them would not be comfortable with it, and they would discourage it, and they'd probably even say, unintentionally so, not from ill will, negative things about your transformation, right? And it's okay. So I would say a big part of why people don't transform is because of they fear losing those relationships and being perceived and being judged as being,
You've changed.
no, you're changed. And yeah, I am changing. And yes, you are definitely changing. And then that's true. So don't lament the fact that they're saying the truth about the fact that you're changing. But tell them, I am changing and here's why. Give them as best a chance as you possibly can through explanations of why and why you're going through what you're going through. When I was going through what I went through, I had extended conversations with people who are important to me. My pastor, we probably had 3 or 4, 5 conversations. One of those conversations went up to 4 or 5 hours. Where he was asking me questions. And eventually the outcome was that, you know what, I realize now I have to pastor you differently. I realize that things have changed so much in your life, I need to do more listening. If I'm going to continue to serve you, I'm going to have to do a bit more listening and learn a bit more about the world, this world that you've now ventured into. When I left the pulpit and gone more into more business. And
that's incredible.
Because that was an important relationship to me. Don't be a coward and run to judgment and say, you know, friends are few when days are dark, you know, those kind of things. And you start casting aspersions on your family. You know, family will never want to support you. First of all, your family they're not your clients. That's not the relationship that they have with you. Your friends are not your clients. They're your friends. That's not the relationship that with you. If they decide to support your business, it is out of the will of their heart. And I think that we better be very careful in this process that we don't condemn, we don't lament, we don't judge, we don't speak ill of the relationships that have actually made us who we are today and that have sustained us to be where we are today when they are having a hard time with our change. And here's the unfair part. You have been toiling in your mind all these years with this change. They didn't know. You are now, all of a sudden, mindset transformational guy. And now you're expecting everybody to just line up. It's unfair. So give them time to process your change, but step into those spaces where, the new spaces where those people know you as this changed person and you can sustain that life.
So good. I know we could speak with you the whole 5 hours that you were speaking to the pastor about, but we've run out of time. But the way we love nudging ourselves to a close is to ask quick questions, and we want quick answers.
Sure. Let's try that. Let's try that.
Tweetable stuff. I know you're sharp, so these things are not very difficult for you. So 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Am I running out of time? Oh, okay. 20 seconds to 30 seconds. What common beliefs or assumptions might be limiting our success?
I think the most common belief is love me as I am. Love me as I am.
That's limiting.
That's limiting. Because do you love yourself as you are?
You?
Do Do you accept yourself as you are?
So unconditional love there's nothing like that.
And only God loves you unconditionally. All of us experience it conditionally. And the conditions of your love determine how we experience your love.
Lovely. How can I reframe my current challenges and see them as opportunities?
Accept, first of all, that life is tough. All right? We all are looking for easy. And don't become an easy target. So for you to not become an easy target, you have to think of yourself more as a tool. What do you need to do to sharpen yourself and to be able to then convert whatever opportunities, whatever problems you have as an opportunity? Every single solution started off as a problem.
Yeah.
Every single solution. There is no these mics, there's water in here. It was a problem of using our hands, and now this is what we have, right? It was a problem of how do we keep this information incubated so that it doesn't get lost. From paper to radio to tape cassette, it was a problem.
Your answer is no longer short. If on the one hand, I think I don't deserve success, do you think there are other people on the other extreme who I feel they are entitled to success without work, and where's the balance?
The balance is exactly that. If you are feeling entitled without working, somebody will have to be exploited. Somebody's hard work will have to be taken to sustain and to build your success.
So, okay, we're in the workplace. When you think about mindset and frameworks, should we still be teaching people resilience?
I think we have to explain it.
Okay.
More than teach it. I think resilience is more for me an explanation more than it is, because all of us are resilient, and we are resilient in different ways. I'm very careful sometimes of even with my own frameworks of trying to prescribe that as the only way. I think resilience in different places looks different, and explaining it as far as components of what resilience is more than what you do. I think it is a factor of what it is more than it is something that you do or something that you cultivate.
What is the mindset of successful people?
I think, again, the way that you think about your life, where do you want to, what is the ultimate impact that you want to have in this world? For me, success is hearing someone say, you know what, you were speaking to me, you've shifted something in me. I love myself better now. Oh, I'm going to go home, I'm going to love my wife better. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be a better leader, right? And then, of course, being rewarded for that. Because before I didn't believe in reward for that kind of thing. But now I'm like, you know what? I actually do need to be rewarded for that, because I'm a father, I'm a husband, but I also need to be able to live. I think that success for me is being able to do this with all the difficulties that come with it, but without the grief of feeling like I'm being used.
Jabu, thank you so much for coming to the show. You know, maybe last question from my side. When I think about the work that you do, and I imagine you going to the workplace and have like long-term work, like the kind of work that helps us to think about what is the mindsets that we want to have in this organization, what are our current mindsets, and how do we shift towards that, both as individuals and as leaders. Because the kind of work that we do, and I'm sure you see this all the time, is that you sometimes have, on the one hand, where leaders say, my employees are quite entitled, they don't want to work, and that's a mindset issue. On the other hand, you have employees that says we have a toxic leadership culture in this place. We have people who are bleeding on us, and that's a mindset issue. Do you do that type of work? What do you need? Any last words around cultivating better mindsets in the workplace, and your contribution on what you can do if anybody wants to know?
Absolutely. I'd say if an organization would like to understand currently, as you've said, what are the mindsets that are prevailing in the environment? How are they impacting people? How are they impacting performance? How are they impacting perception of the organization and also what they do? And then most importantly, where do those mindsets come from in terms of the history of the organization? So there's where they come from, what they are, what are they impacting, and what is the current outcome? And then, of course, lastly, is that then how do you cultivate those new mindsets? And yes, it's not a short-term work. It is a long-term work.
It's not.
In a form of coaching, it works. In a form of facilitating, a couple of days,
5 days,
2 days, 5 days, workshop, or even spreading that out over a certain particular period. The thing about mindset work is that it gives you tools of thinking from the very moment that you start with the program. Your brain, your knowledge starts to become more of a resource, and you're able to design your own tools of thinking to be able to achieve the outcome that you want. So, yeah, that's how I would say it. Yeah.
And then, if we do want to work with you, where can we find you?
Find me jabuzwane.co.za. On most social media handles, I'm at Jabu Zwane Talks.
Okay.
And any kind of work, if you look for Jabu Zwane Mindset Development Specialist online, it'll lead you to all sorts of, whether it be interviews or articles that I've written, or you're able to find that pretty much online.
Thanks for coming, man. This was amazing. This was incredible. I didn't even know where to take it. It's such an honor. You and I have had these conversations, and I think we're going to have you back for 3 hours. Having Jabu for 1 hour does not work, guys. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Please remember to hit that subscribe button. It makes people know where to find us. And until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of organizational behavior and striving to make your workplace better for all. But for me, this episode was a bit different. It's about, making sure that you become a better human being. And all of us have to have time where we look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves difficult questions about, what am I seeing in my life? Am I happy with who I am? Am I happy with the kind of husband I am? Am I happy with the kind of person that I am? And if I'm not, what are some of the things that I need to think about to shift that? And it's the work that is worth it. If I think about my family, if I think about everybody that is around me, it looks like it is worth it to do the work that I have to do in my life so that I become that better parent. So thank you so much for tuning in, Jabu. Thank you. This was amazing.
Thanks a lot for having me, man. It was incredible.
Thank you. We are out.